Hello and welcome to our online reflection this week on Liberton Kirk Online. It's lovely to be with you once again. Let's read today's scripture passage, which comes from 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 6, and it says this: "For this is the reason the gospel was preached even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to human standards in regard to the flesh, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit." I want to tell you a wee story I heard during a sermon when I visited a church in Edinburgh probably a couple of months ago. Picture the scenario. You have a guest preacher that's about to preach one Sunday morning, and maybe 5 or 10 minutes before he reaches up to the pulpit, a guy steps in. But this guy wasn't really a member of the congregation. Perhaps you could say he was a visitor. And so he quietly steps up right to the front seat. Now, over to his right, there are 4 gentlemen that are talking amongst themselves. Now, you can imagine they would probably go out their way to welcome this gentleman, probably maybe even offer them a hot beverage or maybe even a biscuit, maybe take some time to get to know them. Well, not really. They just continue the conversation. One of them actually looks at him and just goes, and then that was it. So it was just a brief eye contact interaction. No conversation, no storytelling, just mere eye contact, and that was it. Then after the service, the gentleman then goes up to these 4 guys who were chatting away for about 5 minutes, talking about their day, talking about their week, and then he goes and says, "Hi there, my name is David, I'm the pastor's son." Can you even imagine the embarrassed look on their faces when they realised it was actually the guest preacher's son that was sitting up at the front? And they didn't welcome him. But that says a lot about perhaps ourselves when we meet new people, or perhaps people that we can find very, very difficult. How too very often do we just assume to write off people even before we even get to know them? You know, that's an inevitable reality for us, and that is a challenge. But here in 1 Peter, it speaks so powerfully about how sometimes we can judge very quickly, how we can judge conclusions, or draw conclusions rather, so instantly. We get to decide if somebody is worthy to have a conversation with, or, to who matters, who is worth our time. But often we can do it with a variety of people, and even sometimes the people that we are called to love. And sometimes we even do it to ourselves. We feel that we are not worthy to have people talk to us. And so we kind of enclose ourselves in a way. But here's the thing. God does not do that. He doesn't write off people for what they look like, for how they present themselves, because he's more concerned of the heart. Wherever we see a stranger, God sees a beloved child of God. Whenever we see a closed story, we see a life that is dearly held in God's hands. Whenever we see someone that we can perceive as too far gone, God sees someone that is worth pursuing, persevering for, even to death on a cross, as demonstrated through his son Christ. And this is why Peter preaches then that this gospel was preached to those even who are dead. Because in God's economy, nobody is written off. Not the visibly lost, not the quietly broken, not people that are forgetted or rejected by society, not even the ones that we think are too late to be reached. God's compassion stretches from even our own assumptions, expectations, and our limitedness, because his patience can outlast that judgment. So here's the difference for us. Perhaps maybe next time that we find somebody new, somebody that we find very challenging, let us ask these questions. Who have we written off so quickly? That person that we find very difficult? That family member who doesn't seem to change? That neighbour that we don't actually understand? Or perhaps maybe that stranger that walks through the church and kind of looks out of place? And perhaps just as importantly, where have we written ourselves off? Where have we decided we can't grow, that we are not worthy to be loved, to be healed, or even beyond hope? Because here's the thing, if God refuses to write off even the dead, he is most certainly not willing to write off the living. And so our challenge, and in this context here for 1 Peter, he's writing to those that for them to seek to display God's grace in all that they do, even in the midst of persecution. There's the challenge for us. May we learn not to just see ourselves, but also see others through the patient, generous eyes of God. Eyes that even recognize the son in the stranger, the beloved in the overlooked, and the possibility of life in every place we've given up on. So there we go. Let's change our lenses. Let's see the way God sees each and every one of us. And maybe perhaps that'll help us incline ourselves more to give a gentle wave, maybe sit down with somebody and to hear their story so we can build that bridge of grace as Christ has done for all of his creation to perhaps people who might feel ignored but need God's love the most. Have a wonderful week. Take care and God bless.